Welcome again, and thank you for being here today. We're going to talk about how to spot bad advice and good advice in everyday life. We all get advice from people we know, from the internet, from strangers. Some of it can be helpful, and some of it can lead us in the wrong direction. This session is about giving you simple, practical steps to help you feel more confident when you're making decisions. We're not looking for perfection. We just want to be more aware and thoughtful in our choices. We're going to talk about simple ideas you can use in everyday life. We'll start by looking at where advice comes from and why it can sometimes lead people in the wrong direction. Then we're going to go over the warning signs to watch for and what helpful, trustworthy advice looks like. You'll also learn the 3-step method to use when you're unsure about how to proceed. Along the way, we'll use real-life examples so that you can practice in a low-pressure setting. The goal is to keep things clear, practical, so by the end you feel more prepared to slow down, think things through, and make choices that fit your life. The reason this topic is so important is because advice can shape real parts of our daily life. It can affect how we spend our money, how we use our time, and even how we handle relationships or job decisions. Sometimes a small choice based on someone else's suggestion can lead to bigger results, both good and bad. For example, taking financial advice without thinking it through might lead to more debt, while following the right advice could help you build stability over time. The same goes for personal decisions, like who to trust and what opportunities to take. What really matters here is learning to slow down just enough to think before acting. You don't have to overanalyze everything, but taking a few extra moments to consider your options can make a big difference. This skill can help you avoid unnecessary stress, save time and money, and feel more in control of your decisions moving forward. Not every decision in life needs the same amount of thought. Some choices are fairly low impact and can be made quickly, like what to wear or what to have for lunch. Other choices can affect your finances, your health, or your future in a much bigger way. Buying something expensive, taking on debt, or making decisions about medical care may require more time, more questions, and more careful thought. One helpful skill is learning to recognize when a decision is small and when it deserves a bigger pause before moving forward. A helpful habit is matching the amount of thought you give a decision to how much impact it may have. Small, everyday choices usually don't need a lot of energy. But when a decision could affect your finances, health, responsibilities, or long-term plans, slowing down becomes much more important. Asking a few simple questions can help you decide whether something needs a quick response or more careful evaluation. The goal is not to make every decision stressful. It's to recognize when something deserves extra attention before you move forward. Small choices equal quicker decisions, and bigger choices should equal slower decisions. Let's take a moment to think about your own experiences. Everyone here has received advice at some point that didn't turn out the way you expected. This could be something small, like buying something you didn't really need. Or maybe it's something bigger, like a decision you later wished you had handled differently. Think about where that advice came from. Was it a friend, a family member? Was it something you saw online? Also, think about how you felt in that moment. Was it rushed, excited, or unsure? We're not talking about judging yourself or causing shame for what happened. This activity is only about noticing patterns. When we look back on past experiences, it can help us make better choices moving forward. If you feel comfortable, you can share your example or you can just reflect quietly. If you want to put this in the chat, if you want to pause and chat with the people around you, you can do that now. Advice can come from so many different places, and it doesn't always look obvious at first. Sometimes it's direct, like when a friend or a family member tells you what they think you should do. Other times it's less direct, like something you see on social media, a video, an ad, or even a comment someone makes in passing. Workers, neighbors, and even strangers can share opinions that start to sound like advice the more you hear them. Just because someone gives you their opinion does not mean that you should take action on that. Some people just like to talk about what they think and what they feel. It is important to remember that just because advice is common or repeated doesn't mean it's right for you. People often share what they believe. They want to share what's worked for them or what they've heard, but it doesn't mean it fits your situation. Everyone's life is different. Your finances, your goals, and your challenges are unique to you. Just because someone gives you their opinion, again, I will repeat, does not mean that it's the right decision for you. Just a second, let me get to okay. One other thing to keep in mind is a lot of advice comes with a purpose, some agenda behind it. For example, an ad might be trying to sell you something, or someone might be encouraging you to make a choice that benefits them in some way. Doesn't mean it's wrong, but it does mean you ought to take a closer look at it. The key idea here is simple. Advice is easy to find. It is your job to decide what actually makes sense for your life before you act on it. And I'm going to say that again, it's your job to discern what actually makes sense for you. A lot of people are going to speak a lot of things into your life. A lot of voices, a lot of ads, a lot of social media. Everybody has an opinion. It's your job to decide what makes sense for your life. Another helpful step is thinking about the person giving the advice. Not all advice carries the same weight, even if it sounds confident. So ask yourself who this person is, how well they understand your situation. If it's someone you know, think about whether they tend to make thoughtful, responsible choices in their own life. Have they shown good judgment? Do they genuinely care about your well-being? If the advice is coming from someone online or a stranger, it may be even more important to pause and look more closely. This is not about judging people or expecting perfection. This is simply recognizing that the source of advice can make a big difference in how much we trust or if caution is appropriate. The source, of course, matters. Sometimes a simple question can be helpful. Would I want the kind of results this person's choices have created? It doesn't mean that someone has to be perfect. to offer useful advice, but it can help you think more clearly about the source. If someone often acts impulsively, they struggle with their own similar decisions or poor decisions, or they give advice based mostly on emotion, that could be a sign to be more cautious. On the other hand, someone that tends to think more carefully, acts responsibly, and wants the best for you may offer more helpful guidance. This helps you move beyond just listening to what's being said and also consider who it's coming from. So let's talk a little bit more about why advice can miss the mark. Not all the time, we're talking about sometimes. One reason is that people often speak from their own experience. What has worked for them? Hang on just one second. And what's worked for them might have depended on their timing, their income, their support system. Maybe it's just luck. When those details are different, the same advice may not lead to the same result for you. So we just need to remember, what works for someone else may have had totally different dynamics than what you're experiencing. It may be similar. We're just encouraging you to think and pause and question. Another reason is that people don't always have all the information. I think we have all experienced this, where someone gives advice when they don't have all the information. We all do this. We've all done it before. It's just a part of living. They may not know the full situation, your goals, or the challenges you're dealing with. And without that full picture, even well-meaning suggestions can fall short. Sometimes people also pass along advice they've heard from others without checking its accuracy. So when someone says, "I've heard this works," that's great. Maybe they're talking about how to remove toenail polish. Maybe they're talking about how to clean your dishes better. You have to adjust your thought process, like we said before, of how important is this decision. Some things you just naturally just move on with. That's fine. Good intentions, though, do not mean it's accurate advice. There are also times when emotions play a big role. Someone might give advice based on fear, excitement, or frustration instead of facts. For example, they may push you to act quickly because they feel strongly about something, not because it's the best choice. So many times, what I feel strongly about or what causes me fear or anxiety affects what kind of advice I give other people. It's important to evaluate where that's coming from. So strong feelings can lead to rushed advice and pressure to make decisions. Lastly, some advice is influenced by personal benefit. What's in it for them? This could be someone trying to sell you a product, gain something, or steer you in a direction that works best for them. Understanding these reasons helps you stay aware. This is not about blaming others, it's about recognizing that not all advice is built on solid ground. So take a look before you follow. Let's pause and do a quick check-in. Think about a time when you followed advice that sounded right at first but didn't turn out the way you'd hoped. What made it sound convincing in the moment? Did it come from someone you trusted? Or maybe it sounded easy or simple? Now, think about what happened after. Did things feel harder than expected? Did you wish you had asked more questions or taken more time? This is not about blaming yourself again. Everyone has moments like this. The goal is to start noticing what made that advice feel believable. When you recognize those patterns, it becomes easier to slow down next time and take a closer look before making a decision. We're all practicing decision making for our whole lives. And so what this course is about today is helping you teaching you to reflect, to look backwards, to make decisions on what decisions were made, how to make better decisions moving forward. So let's focus on some warning signs that might help you spot advice that may not be helpful. One common sign is when something is presented as a one-size-fits-all solution. If someone says, "This works for everyone," that's a reason to pause. Life situations are different, and there's rarely one answer that fits all people. Another sign is pressure. When you feel like you have to decide quickly, that can be a red flag. Good decisions usually allow time to think. Also, pay attention if something sounds overly simple or promises big results with little effort. Too good to be true, maybe? In real life, most good outcomes take time and effort. This is how advice makes you feel. If you're feeling confused, rushed, or unsure, that is important information. Another warning sign is a lack of explanation. If someone can't clearly explain why something works, it may not be reliable. These signs don't always mean the advice is wrong, but they're just signals to slow down and take a closer look before you move forward. Slow down and take a closer look. Let's look at a few everyday examples so these warning signs might feel more real. Imagine someone says, "You have to jump on this opportunity today or you're going to lose it." That kind of message is creating urgency. Another example might be, "Don't worry about the details, just trust me." Well, that can make it harder for you to fully understand what you're agreeing to. Maybe you might hear something like, "I did this and it worked perfectly. You should do it too." Or, "You're an idiot if you don't do it." That ignores the fact that your situation could be different. Some of these things might make you feel rushed, unclear, or pressured. When you hear statements like these, it is helpful to pause and take a step back. Ask yourself if you're being given enough information to make a clear decision. If something feels unclear or rushed, that's a good reason to slow things down and think it through. It's okay to slow down and think things through. We're going to practice using what we've talked about. I'm going to read a few short statements, and I want you to think about whether they sound helpful or if they raise concerns. There's no pressure to get a perfect answer. This is just about building awareness and noticing patterns. Let's start with the first statement. Invest now before it's too late. Think about how that sounds. Does this encourage you to take time to think? Does it create pressure to act quickly? That sense of urgency can be a red flag. Now let's look at this statement. This worked for me, so I'm sure it'll work for you. At first, that might sound convincing, but does that person know your full situation, your goals, your finances? What works for one person may not fit everyone else's life. And what about this? Take your time. Think this over. Think first. This advice gives you space to slow down, ask questions, and consider your options before making a decision. As we go through these examples, notice which statements felt thoughtful and which ones felt rushed or unclear. Now let's take a moment to clear up a few common beliefs that can lead people in the wrong direction. One idea is that good advice should feel exciting or urgent. In reality, when something feels rushed or overly exciting, it can sometimes cloud your judgment. Slowing down helps you see things more clearly. Another belief is that if something worked for one person, it should work the same way for you. The truth is, we all have different responsibilities, resources, and goals. What works well for one person may not fit your situation at all. The same advice may work differently for each person. That's a great thing to remember. It's also easy to think that more confidence means better advice. But confidence does not equal accuracy. Someone can sound very sure and still be mistaken. The goal here is to remind yourself that it's okay to question what you hear. Taking a step back and looking at things carefully can help you make decisions that are more stable and better suited to your own life. You don't have to accept advice right away. You can question it and decide what's best for you. Now let's focus on what helpful guidance really looks like in everyday situations. One sign is that it considers your specific circumstances. Instead of giving a general answer, it connects to your goals, your responsibilities, and what you're able to manage right now. That kind of input feels personal and realistic. It fits your situation. It's not just a general answer. Helpful advice connects to you. Another sign here is clarity. Helpful input is explained in a way that makes sense. You understand what is being suggested and why it might work. When something's hard to follow or leaves you with questions, more questions than answers, it may not be very useful. Supportive guidance also respects your choices. This allows you to take time, think things through, and decide what feels right for you. It doesn't make you feel guilty for asking questions or wanting more information. You should never feel guilty for asking for more information. It can also include realistic expectations. Instead of promising quick or perfect results, it acknowledges that progress often takes effort and time. When you notice these qualities, it becomes easier to feel more comfortable and steady in your decisions. You're not being pushed, you're being supported in a way that helps you move forward at a pace that works for you. As a simple reminder to everything we just covered, think about how the message feels and what it encourages you to do. Helpful input usually gives you space to think and understand your options. On the other hand, guidance that pushes you to move quickly can make it harder to think clearly. Keeping this difference in mind can help you respond more thoughtfully in everyday situations. So take a moment and think about someone in your life whose input you value. This might be a friend or a family member. Maybe it's a coworker or a mentor. What is it about the way they share their thoughts that makes it easier to listen? Maybe they take time to understand your situation, or they explain things in a clear, calm way. Maybe they don't push you, but instead help you think things through. You don't have to share out loud unless you want to. When I say out loud, I do mean in the chat. This is just a chance to look at what helpful support looks like in real life so that you can recognize it more easily in the future. We want to notice the good advice, so that helps us to recognize good advice. Looking at the real thing is helpful. Sometimes advice that is not overbearing gives us time to be thoughtful in taking it in. Even when something doesn't feel quite right, it can still be hard to push back or say no. One reason is that many of us are taught to be polite and to go along with what others suggest, especially if it's coming from someone we know or respect. It can feel uncomfortable to question someone or ask for more time. Just because someone we love, someone that cares about us, is giving us advice, doesn't mean that we need to jump on it immediately. We need to learn polite ways to respond in a way to say we would like additional time to consider what they're saying. It's okay to take that moment. Okay, what about fear and trust of missing out? Sorry, what about trust and fear of missing out? Got that totally backwards. Look at that. Well, if advice is coming from a friend, a family member, or someone we look up to, we may assume it's the right choice without even thinking it through. There could also be a fear of missing out on something. When something sounds like a good opportunity, it's easy to worry that waiting might be losing your chance. But not every opportunity is the right one. And there are so many different decisions and options we have. We want to be sure and evaluate on these big items. It's one thing to have a fear of missing out on an invitation to go to the movies or dinner. But it's another when you're talking about fear of missing out on something that involves money or health. Pressure can also play a really big role in your choices. Sometimes it's not said directly, but you might feel like you're expected to decide quickly or agree right away. That pressure makes it harder to slow down and think clearly. An important thing to remember is that taking a moment does not mean you're being difficult or disrespectful. This only means you are giving yourself the time to make a decision that fits for your life. You have every right to pause, think, and choose about what works best for you. To make this easier, we're going to use a 3-step method that you can rely on anytime when you're not sure about what to do. These steps are designed to slow things down and give you a clear path forward. Instead of reacting in the moment, this method will help you take control of the situation. This doesn't require any special knowledge or experience. This is just a willingness to pause and think it through. So, as we go through each step, think about how you might use it in your own daily life. The goal is to make this feel natural and easy to apply when it matters most. The first step is to give yourself a brief break before making any choice. This might be as simple as saying, "You can decide later," or "You will decide later," or stepping away from the situation for a few minutes, excusing yourself. Creating this space helps you move out of reaction mode and into thinking mode. It also gives you time to notice how you're feeling and whether anything is influencing you in that moment. Even a short delay can make a difference. You don't have to rush just because something is presented to you. Giving yourself that space helps you approach the decision with a clearer mindset. The second step is to get curious and gather a little bit more information. Instead of accepting something at face value, take a moment and explore it further. You might ask for details to look at how it would affect your daily life, or think about possible downsides. This helps you move from a guessing to understanding, and it also gives you a chance to see if the suggestion actually lines up with your priorities and your responsibilities. You don't need to overcomplicate this. Just a few thoughtful questions can help you to see things more clearly before you move forward. The third step is to look outside of the original suggestion and gather another point of view. This doesn't have to be complicated either. It could be as simple as talking to someone you trust who knows you well, or taking a few minutes to read or watch some basic information from a reliable source. The goal is to help avoid relying on just one perspective. When you compare different viewpoints, it becomes easier to notice what stays consistent and what doesn't. If multiple sources are saying the same thing, that can give you more confidence. And if the information is different, that's just a sign to slow down and look more closely. This step also helps you feel more in control. Instead of depending on one opinion, you're building your own understanding over time, and this can make decision-making feel less stressful and more manageable in everyday situations. Now let's put these steps into actions with a simple situation. Imagine you have come across a post online that promises an easy way to earn money quickly. At first glance, it seems appealing, especially if it looks simple and low effort. So instead of jumping right in, think about how you would handle it using the steps we just learned. What details do you want to know? What parts might seem unclear? Are there any warning signs that stand out? Take a moment and think it through. You can share your thoughts in the chat. You can reflect quietly. We're just talking about practicing in a safe space. Things that you want to look at, things like fast money. It doesn't take much effort. Easy money. The pressure to sign up quickly. Does it cost you money to get more information? Some of the questions that we want to think about are those easy things of, okay, are there things missing? But in order to ask that question, it takes time. You want to sit and dwell on it. Who will benefit from this? Is someone else going to benefit because I'm required to make a purchase to learn this information? It doesn't mean we shouldn't make a purchase to learn information. We often pay for education. But we want to make a good evaluation about, is this a good and wise choice? What are the things that might possibly go wrong? Sit down and dwell with it. And let us know right here in the chat, what other questions could you think of? What are the feelings you might be experiencing as you process this type of information? Are the feelings fear because in this situation, you need money? If I don't do this, how will I make ends meet? Is it because you desire something? You want to buy X and you don't have the funds for that, but if I do this, I will have some extra money. Or is there anxiety because you have a gap in your income and you need some other income in order to fill it? That pressure requires you to take a moment and sit with this before you make decisions to expend money in order to make money, especially if you think there might be a trap. So use these steps right now in a low pressure way. Think of some examples, but you can use these as helpful guides because they are simple, easy steps to follow. So let's try a quick question together. You're given two options. One tells you to decide right away, and the other suggests taking time before choosing. Think about which one supports a better outcome. It's not hard. Of course, the answer is B. Take a day to think about it. When you're given space to think, you're more likely to notice details and consider your situation and avoid mistakes. Quick decisions can sometimes lead to regret, especially if you don't have all the information. The question is here to remind you that time is often your advantage when making choices. If you don't have time, you want to make the best possible use and pause if you can. But when the bigger the decision, the more time you want to take in engaging it. Here's another simple question to think about. Is it safer to rely on just one opinion or to hear more than one perspective? Of course, the answer is B. Hearing more than one opinion is better. When you only hear one side or one voice, you may miss important information. Looking at more than one viewpoint can help you see a fuller picture and feel more confident in your decision. This doesn't mean you have to agree with everything you hear, but it gives you more time to work with so that you can choose what makes the most sense for your situation. More perspectives are always better than one perspective. Let's take a look at a real-life situation. Imagine a friend suggests taking out a loan for something you don't truly need. It might sound helpful in the moment, especially if they make it seem easy or normal. But this is a good time to slow down and think about your own priorities. Ask yourself, how does this decision affect your monthly expenses and overall financial stability? Is it something that adds value to your life? Or would it create stress later? Also, think about whether your friend fully understands your situation. Take a moment to practice thinking through the outcome before making a choice. What are the red flags? Could this cause you stress? Does this fit for me right now? And again, consider the source. The source of, is it a friend? Is it someone who cares and understands about what your big goals are moving forward? Now think about another situation. You come across a solution online that promises fast results with little effort. Tempting, especially when you're looking for something to make life easier. But take a step back and think about whatever it is that's being offered. Does it explain how it works clearly? Are there details missing? Try and picture what would happen after you follow through. Would the results be realistic, or does it seem a little too perfect? There is a chance to practice looking beyond the surface and think about what makes sense long term, not just what looks good in the moment. If it sounds like a quick fix, take a closer look before you act. Imagine a family member is encouraging you to make a decision quickly. This can feel especially difficult because you may not want to disappoint them. Take a moment to think about how you might respond and still be respectful. You can acknowledge what they're saying while also giving yourself space. Think about what matters most to you and whether the timing feels right. It's really okay to take a step back, even in close relationships. This is about practicing how to stay calm, think clearly. The hardest part is knowing what to say in the moment. Having a few simple phrases ready can make it easier to handle these situations calmly. You don't need a long explanation. Short responses can give you space while you're still being respectful. For example, you could say, "You'll think about it," or that you want to look into it more. This helps you stay in control of your decision without creating conflict. Practicing these responses can make it feel more natural over time. Saying you're not ready to decide yet. These are not rude. It just gives you some time to say, I need time and space to make a good decision. This is respectful and helps you stay in control. Grows over time and often starts with small changes. Every time you slow down and think about something, thinking it through, you're building a strong habit. This is not getting it perfect. That's not what we're looking for. What matters is that you're being more aware and intentional. The more you practice, the easier it becomes to trust yourself and feel steady in your decisions, even in situations that used to feel overwhelming. The practice builds your confidence, each decision one at a time. Let's take a moment to bring everything together. You've learned how to notice warning signs, recognize helpful guidance, and use a simple process to think things through. These are tools you can use in everyday life, whether the decision is big or small. Keeping things simple and consistent over time can make a big difference. Before we finish, take a moment to think about what stood out to you today. It might be a step, a strategy, or even a new way of looking at situations. Try to choose one thing you can apply the next time you're faced with a decision. Focusing on one small action can help turn what you've learned into something useful. You don't have to change everything. Changing one small thing at a time builds momentum. Pick a step you can use, maybe a question you'll ask, or a new way to respond. You can think of this checklist as a quick reminder you can carry with you. Before moving forward with the decision, take a moment to run through these points in your mind. Even a short pause to check in with yourself can help you feel more prepared. Over time, this process can become second nature and support better choices in everyday situations. As we're wrapping up, remember that making thoughtful choices is a skill you can continue to build. We're building it, all of us, throughout our life. You don't have to rush or have everything figured out right away. Taking time, staying aware, and using the tools from today can help you move forward with confidence. Thanks for being a part of today's session and for taking the time to invest in yourself.